Today we are ranking the albums of Opeth through the Last Will and Testament, but we're starting back at the beginning with Orchid in 1995. Now, the debut is far from my favorite album from these Swedish progressive death metal legends, but it is a very strong start. The atmosphere right from the top is just completely its own. I still remember the first time I heard it and being utterly captivated by its folky overtones right from the first guitars of In Mist She Was Standing. You want to talk about longer songs that are well written and hold my attention? This is what I'm talking about. And they would only improve from here, but on this list I feel more than happy giving it like a great tier. Just know that they don't really have an album that I truly dislike. Next up we have Morningrise in 1996. Continuing to hone their trademark sound and shifting to much longer tracks on this one for another beefy runtime, stepping up both the production and precision performances, but I will admit that this one is a bit longer than it needs to be. It can even be a little dull at times for an active listen, but still an excellent album, especially in this year, but just not as memorable as some others that came out around the same time. I'm going to put this one at good tier. Next up is My Arms, Your Hearse in 1998. Now this is where they really come into their own. Top 3 for sure. So many killer tracks here, my personal favorites including April Ethereal, When, The Amen Corner, and Demon of the Fall. Just beautiful, again, eerie energy and atmosphere, and I love the tragic romance of the very gothic ghost story concept. Tighter runtime than the last two as well. I just don't think there's a lot of fat on the bone here. I'm gonna put this one at perfection. Then we got Still Life in 1999. Now, probably my hottest take on the channel over the years has been calling this album overrated. But again, even the worst Opeth album is still miles above the competition, and I've always thought that opening track, The More, is an absolute masterpiece and perhaps the best song they've ever written. I also enjoy Godhead's Lament. Now that said, whenever people have an opinion on an album that I disagree with, my first question is, how long has it been since their last revisit? We don't have to agree, but I do find that my opinions change all the time, even on albums like this that I've been listening to for close to 20 years. And that's why I always give a fresh re-listen before I do these videos, and wouldn't you know it, I decided to spin it this time on a hike through the forest, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't love it all the way through. So yeah, all the people arguing with me in the past, they can feel vindicated. I am going to, at least within their own discography, put this at perfection.
Goddamn right.
So remember, opinions aren't set in stone. All of my videos just represent a moment in time. They really have nothing to do with coming up with some objective metric, as some people seem to think that I'm doing, even though I've never claimed to do anything close to that. Rather, I just want to give people some personal entry points to ultimately get excited to form their own thoughts and check out the music. But moving on, we have Blackwater Park in 2001. Now, what can be said about this album that others, including myself, haven't already said many, many times before? This is the seminal album that Rolling Stone named number 55 on their 100 Greatest Metal Albums of All Time list. Leave it to Ackerfeld, with the help of the legendary Steven Wilson, to craft an experience that is still just as satisfying to this day. From the opening notes of the Leper Affinity with those bouncy guitar riffs to the closing melody of the title track, just start to finish, absolute perfection. Like, there's no question. It's still my favorite album, even though it's kind of like the basic bitch pick. So many people love it for a reason in this case. Not a single dull moment. But moving on, we have Deliverance in 2002. Now, no album wants to follow Blackwater Park, but this ends up holding its own quite well, I would say. Strong start with Wreath kicking off heavy, and I love that little tribal tom interlude. Also very much enjoy the very Rush but death metal kind of YYZ riff on the title track. A bit more of those start-stop riffs on the closer too, which also just takes you on quite a few twists and turns. Master's Apprentices is super groovy, and love the vocal hook on A Fair Judgment. Most songs start very strong, but I think my major issue with this one is that they start to drag kind of later on in parts. I don't think it's quite as consistent in that way, so this one landed at amazing. Then we got Damnation just a year later in 2003. Under the fog, there are shadows moving. The The acoustic counterpart to Deliverance, I believe they were supposed to be released together originally. And I never found myself really connecting with this one. I know some people really enjoy it, but I've thrown it on a handful of times, and even revisiting it now, it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. Window pane is decent. Closure gets pretty dark and throws in some spooky synths. To Rid the Disease has nice dynamics. But my favorite is easily Death Whispered a Lullaby. Kind of a preview of some things to come. I'm going to put this one at okay. Follow that up with Ghost Reveries in 2005.
The hope into the room is that you have to live before you die.
Another stellar album that I think falls into a very similar sound as Blackwater Park. Killer opener in the 10+ minute Ghosts of Perdition, going into the also strong The Baying of the Hounds at just a few seconds longer. But my favorite here are definitely Beneath the Mire and of course The Grand Conjuration. That start-stop riff with the synths on the former is everything. 10 out of 10 song, and amazing guitar and drumming on the latter. Atonement also has some cool kind of Tool energy on it. Really enjoy this one pretty much all the way through. Lots of imposing vocal moments and fantastic guitar work. I think you could argue that this could also go to perfection, but I'm putting it at fantastic. Next up is Watershed in 2008. I feel like I've heard some people talk trash about this one, not recently, but that's just like floating in my memory somewhere. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you think of it down on the comments, but I think it picks up nicely right where the last one left off. Another killer 1-2 punch in Heir Apparent and The Lotus Eater. What a set of super heavy power tracks with absolutely massive riffs and wailing solos. It's impossible to not bang my head to the latter within the first few seconds. Awesome Moog solo too. And by the way, as far as the synths go, I'm probably going to use the wrong terminology in some places, but I think that's Moog. Anyways, Burden is a stunning clean vocal performance from Michael alongside an awesome Hammond organ solo that feels like a preview of things to come also, and then an ending on a strong note too with Hex Omega. I'm also going to put this one at fantastic. Then we got Heritage in 2011. I say the piano intro on this one feels a little bit out of place. I think it kind of clashes. I would prefer if we just went right into the full 70s prog of The Devil's Orchard. Love all of the jazzy additional instrumentation, and in spite of the lack of harsh vocals, it still sounds quite evil, not dissimilar to Ghost. Similar classic rock notes on Slither and The Lines in My Hand, and with guitar work straight out of like King Crimson, Jethro Tull, and even Led Zeppelin. The more acoustically driven parts of I Feel the Dark and Folklore wouldn't have been all that out of place on the last few albums. Love the subtle kind of enslaved sounding synths on these as well. So even though I felt a little bit upset at the time, admittedly, now that I've had years to adjust, I can appreciate these songs a lot more. The bigger issue for me presently is that I just find larger stretches later on like Nepenthe, Hex Process, and Famine to be pretty but kind of boring. So I'm going to put this one at good tier. Next up is Pale Communion in 2014.
Voices of despair, with familiar friendship.
That boredom unfortunately leaks into Eternal Rains Will Come, which is probably my least favorite opener of any of their albums. Cusp of Eternity is much better. The constantly building tension here feels like a pot slowly boiling over. Also love that vocal break in the middle of Moon Above, Sun Below. Killer drumming on Goblin and fantastic ominous strings on Voice of Treason. Some really decent high points here, but I really prefer the last one, and I think just overall I find this one to be also even more dull. Again, I see some people rank this one a little bit higher, so again, let me know down in the comments. This is just my own subjective opinion. If you love this album and rank it up on the list, why is that? For me, it's just okay. Then we got Sorceress in 2016. Much funkier energy to the opening title track, contrasted with the doomy chug of the guitars. One of the more metal sounding tracks in a while too. Nice stomp to the Wildflowers. I even get a touch of Primus energy further in. Will-O-the-Wisp, Sorceress 2, and the Seventh Sojourn, that's a lot of S sounds, bring more classic Opeth acoustic energy, and Chrysalis sounds damn near a Blackwater Park track, again, minus the harsh vocals. Great energy and overall songwriting on Strange Brew too. Just really hear the entire band working as a unit with this one. I ended up putting it at great, but I could, again, with this one, maybe argue even putting it higher. Next up is In Cauda Venenum in 2019. Now this one, I do like the intro on this one. It's very moody with the nature sounds and more ambient elements, kind of Pink Floyd, and ends up perfectly setting up the explosive opening of Dignity with the gigantic blasts of organ and layered vocals. Another seriously infectious head bobber in Heart in Hand, killer drumming, very memorable vocal performance, and more than sufficiently heavy too. Yet more wonderful acoustic on Next of Kin, so much soul in the guitar alone, just stunning. Lovelorn Crime kind of mixes the newer sound with elements calling back to Still Life. Love the throbbing, distorted bass and noodly guitars of Charlatan. Great bass groove and epic soaring Middle Eastern tinged synths on Universal Truth, giving me some Kashmir vibes, and then more Kilo soloing on Continuum. Excellent album. Like, probably my favorite of all the ones that do not have harsh vocals. It is going to amazing. Now, before we get to the latest album, I just want to remind you, if you're enjoying the video, hit the like button. If you dislike, hit the dislike. And again, comment below, where do you agree, where do you disagree? But that brings us to the last will and testament in 2024. This has been the longest gap between albums to date, and the best summary of the reaction to the return of the death growls was the meme I showed at the top of the video. Like, as I've said, I respect an artist following their passion, even if it's in a direction that's just not as much for me anymore, but I'd be lying if I wasn't low-key praying for this moment. Total banger while also incorporating all the new lessons they have learned along the way. Just incredible song. And as for the full album, it's just 8 tracks this time, and surprisingly none breaking the 7.5-minute barrier, though they all flow together like one seamless experience. Michael's vocals opening 2 sound like brimstone heat blowing straight in my face, but then as quite the counterpart, Ian Anderson of the aforementioned Death Row Toll and Joey Tempest of Europe both guest here as well. 3 and 4 continue with more of the energy of the previous 2 albums with funky bass and expansive strings and synth elements, but the latter brings back the death growls for further contrast, and I must say it's pretty interesting to hear those old harsh vocals applied within this more retro sounding context. Surprise harp solo too, and jazz flute also courtesy of Ian Anderson. 5 sort of fuses Blackwater Park energy with the 60s and 70s influences for a truly unholy union. Just totally unique stuff that feels 100% one of a kind. With all the music I listen to on a weekly basis, it's rare that something actually excites me, but this definitely did that. I could not stop thinking about it. Killer drumming on track 6 that really helps to punctuate a number of transitions with fun time signature changes and little solos. Another standout track for me. 7 also really likes to play with your expectations. 1 minute it's a pure head bobber, the next it's a Carnegie Hall worthy epic, and still the next is pure death metal with further hints of Enslaved. And by the way, Enslaved and Opeth really need to put together a tour for this one, because their sounds just mesh so well at this point. Bonus plug, check out my Enslaved tier list too, because they are so underrated. And finally, the only track with a formal name, A Story Never Told, ends things on a soft and slow piano-driven note. Far from my favorite closer and my least favorite here, but a pretty one nonetheless. So, is this a return to the glory days? I mean, yes and no, it depends on how you look at it. You can never really relive the glory days, and this is no Blackwater Park, but I do think that it signals another interesting and exciting moment for the band that has potential to spark a lot of feels both old and new, which is fitting to the variety of musical decades that inspire the writing. Very consistently engaging. The more I listened to it, the better it got, and yeah, I ended up putting it all the way up at fantastic, and I'll be interested to see how these rankings maybe continue to change in the future. Y'all check out this playlist for more death metal rankings, or this video for your personal YouTube recommendation, but that'll do it for now. I just slapped the microphone. That'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.